Virgo, welcome to your June 2020 Astro Alchemy. It's Rena here. So in June, this is such a change agent month for everybody. And for you, because you are a mutable sign, the sun being in Gemini is going to kind of play off of you. Your Gemini, I was going to say your sun, the transiting sun, is in the 10th house of career. And so that can be very powerful. Now, obviously, we have world events that are kind of still in play. I'm recording this at the end of May. This is one of the reasons why I don't like to do any type of forecast too far in advance, because things can happen seemingly overnight. I was just thinking about the last time that I had had a cup of coffee in a cafe, and that was 2.5 months ago almost, and or going to church, and same thing, the same day actually, mid-March. Now, at the beginning of March, I had no clue that anything was going to change in my life or in the life of the world. And I think that all of us felt that way. And then all of a sudden, bam. So I don't want to make assumptions about what is going to be the case. If you're still employed at this point, what kind of situation you may be dealing with. And of course, this is a general forecast anyhow. But it could be good for career. It could be a time when you're really putting a lot of emphasis on this area of life. Now, you also have Venus retrograde in this house as well, all month long. Venus goes direct on the 25th. This can be a situation of maybe your values as it relates to career matters. Being an earth sign, and being even, I would say, even being ruled by Mercury, there can be this kind of marriage between the practical and the intellectual that informs even the type of work that you do. So a typical profession that I would think of for a Virgo person, especially with Gemini at your midheaven, or a Virgo rising person, could be perhaps the media, like the news, what is happening, or trying to give out information for other people, to other people, and education. Now, both of these fields are not without, their downsides, especially nowadays. And so it wouldn't surprise me if people are questioning their values as it relates to these specific fields, but of course it can be anything that you are involved with. I'm just giving that extra layer of what it might entail. Virgo itself rules the 6th house of health and the workplace and, pets and things like that in your daily routine. So in terms of health, that can be also a draw to Virgo people, is some sort of a profession that involves health. And usually it starts from the ground floor up of the mainstream healthcare industry, and then for some people who kind of question the narrative, to go into more of the energetic healing. But this is just for the sign of Virgo itself, because I'm especially the sun sign, because when I'm doing, private readings, and I'm doing life path type of readings for people that are kind of at a crossroads in their journey and they're looking for something else, I don't just look at the midheaven, I look at the sun, I look at the north node, I look at different elements to kind of synthesize what could be a logical second act, if you will. And so that may be, and because you're a mutable sign, and because Gemini is at your midheaven, it could be a jack of all trades, if you want to know the truth about it. So, but you might be kind of questioning those things, and you're questioning it as it relates to your own values, because Venus can be about that. And even like the monetary angle, again, you're an earth sign, so all the earth signs tend to have that part of themselves that requires the tangible proof of something. So if you're working, you want that kind of proof that what you're doing is paying off. And I'm not saying being overly materialistic. I'm saying that it's just the tangibility factor. Now, if you were a Taurus, I might say differently. For Virgo, you are a sign of simplicity, but you still may feel like, I'm putting out this effort and I want the symbolism in the form of the gold coins representing the pentacles to be given to me. And yet, let's say that you have a second act, you want a different type of profession, maybe something that has more emotional value rather than financial gain. And yet you're wrestling with this. Yes, but I'm going to be making less money. How can I do this? Blah, blah, blah. So that could be what's going on. Perhaps you're in the middle of a salary dispute. In the 10th house versus the 6th house, there could be a battle with higher ups. The 10th house can be those people who are your supervisors, who are authority figures. Perhaps if the father represents the 10th house, some kind of money, if your father has passed away and it's an inheritance, and you're dealing with these kinds of issues. Actually, interestingly, your 8th house is Aries, if I'm not mistaken, Virgo. And Mars is going in that house on the 27th of June. So that might be something related to fighting over a will. Now, I'm not, this is talking about something that has already transpired. So if that doesn't resonate with you, then it's probably something else. Okay, this is not something new, but something that has already been in the works. So something can get resolved after the 25th of June. This is a month, I think one of the big stories of June is some more eclipses. And this goes into July as well. So we have a lunar eclipse at 15 degrees of Sag, fellow mutable sign, on the 5th of the month. And so this is in that 4th house of home and family. Now, for those of you who are in the last 14 degrees, this is actually falling in your 3rd house. 3rd and 4th houses can be family members. 3rd house can be siblings. 4th house can be mother. 10th house can be father. So all of this can be engaged in the month of June, family members. For instance, let's use this example of the will. What if you find out that a sibling or siblings are trying to pull one over on you regarding a will, misrepresenting it, maybe didn't tell you about it, power of attorney, who knows? Or the mother situation, and this can even be just on the psychological or spiritual level of understanding what kind of things have gone on, the dynamics of the family. These kinds of things are not uncommon. in life, at any point in your life's journey, even if you're middle-aged, older than that, where, and I'm speaking from experience, where you're bopping along for years on end, and then all of a sudden you're like, dang, I just realized what it's like, pulling the mask off of somebody, and this could be some family member who you really, kind of like characterized in a certain way, and you find out that that just isn't true. And it's heartbreaking sometimes. It really can be, because in my particular case, I always thought of myself as a perceptive person, as somebody who doesn't deal with denial. I have the moon in Virgo. I tend to be analytical about my feelings. I don't tend to get carried away with fantasies when it comes to feelings, and I don't consider myself emotionally deluded, and I still fell for the okie doke to some degree. So it's funny, when I said that, it was 11/11, so I don't know if that means anything, but yeah, I mean, it's really sad, because it kind of like pokes a hole in your dreams. It kind of pops your balloon, so to speak. But in another sense, it can free you from the merry-go-round of dealing with certain people who may claim to be in your corner, but they're anything but. They're more like your enemy, if anything. And they can, and you may know that they're problematic, but you never really understood how bad they are for you. I'm not saying bad just in general, because I do believe that everybody is a divine child of God, and I don't think that we should ever hate people and, have animosity towards people. But I do believe that sometimes we have to be very wary of certain relationships, and we can get indoctrinated, or just kind of believe that we give somebody the benefit of the doubt when they just haven't shown that they are deserving of it, and we glossed over things that we shouldn't have. So just keep that in mind if anything goes on like this, that this could occur either with siblings or with your mom. Sometimes people say the 4th house is the father and the 10th house is the mother. No, that makes no sense to me, because even the yin and yang, the 4th house is the domestic area. Cancer rules the 4th house. So that does not make sense. But, sometimes what they will say is the dominant parent is the 10th house, the more of the authority figure. And yes, I could see that, but I prefer to keep it as the mother is the 4th house and the siblings are the 3rd house. And also aunts and uncles and cousins might be the 3rd house, if I'm not mistaken. I thought the 6th house were grandparents. Who knows? But then on the 18th, we have a Mercury retrograde. You're ruled by Mercury, Virgo, so I don't know if you feel this more acutely or if you sail through Mercury retrogrades with flying colors. I have found that Mercury retrogrades are not all created equal. I don't know if it's specifically the sign that they're in, or at angles that, depending on other transits that are making hard angles to them, or what. But I was just having an experience where it seemed like it should have been a Mercury retrograde with all this kind of technology snafus, and it wasn't. So I don't think that we should give Mercury retrograde too much credit, but by the same token, if you find that something is consistently off, then you can understand that that might be the case. And it can give you a sense of comfort, actually. And not just with Mercury retrograde, but some of these other retrogrades, because you realize that this too shall pass. This is at 14 degrees of Cancer. So this is going to fall in, let's see, your 11th house, I guess. 11th house of hopes and wishes. This could have some connection with friends, losing contact or having a misunderstanding with friends or a group that you belong to. And that can even be connected to, I'm wondering if it's connected to these other retrogrades. I mean, these other issues like the lunar eclipse, because actually, for those later degree, or should I say latter degree, later degree, Virgos, the last 14 degrees, with the lunar eclipse falling in your third house, this could be your local community, and this is only, oh no, it's actually quite a bit before that. It's on the 5th of the month. So the Mercury retrograde is actually happening a couple of weeks after the lunar eclipse, but I don't want you to be too concerned about the date of the lunar eclipse. Sometimes I've heard astrologers talk about it affecting people before the actual date, so in the month prior. So even some of you may be experiencing this right now in May as I record this, and even past June, perhaps. So if, for instance, you belong to a group in your local area, maybe political organization or a community outreach kind of a group, and there's some kind of disagreement or something where you don't understand each other, there may be temporarily some kind of issue along those lines, or with a friendship. This can also throw a wrench into any kind of long-range goal that you had that perhaps you felt like it was about to kind of come to culmination. Actually, there's going to be this solar eclipse in the same sector on the 21st, which I find interesting because it's going to be during that Mercury retrograde. The day after the summer solstice, winter solstice, let's say solstice, we have a solar eclipse at 0 degrees of Cancer in the house of hopes and wishes. And even if I think that this is actually better. Usually the window for new moons, which this is a very powerful new moon, the regular new moon, it's like 3 days or so, where it's at its height of power. Or although you could say it's 2 weeks until the full moon harvest. However, because this is a solar eclipse, it has a longer lifespan. Now, I have heard, again, these are all differing opinions between astrologers. I've heard 40 days. The 40-day number resonates with me just because the number 4 is a number of structure. And so, and you see that in the Bible about 40 days and 40 nights. I really think that if something is getting off the ground, that 40 days sounds very, that resonates with me, but it can even be 6 months until the next eclipse in the opposite sign, which would be, I'm sorry, the lunar eclipse in Cancer, which is at the end of the year on December 30th. So in that 6 month time frame, some astrologers may say that is when this solar eclipse is activated for that length of time. But in any case, you may have a dream come true, maybe even multiple things. Are they related? I would think that that would make sense in that 11th house, and this can be something that you have wanted for a very long time. But you have you have Mercury here at the time of that solar eclipse. So be sure to really mull it over, because you want to be good to go when Mercury goes direct in July. I think it's around July 12th, 10th or 12th. And that can be the resolution of what it is that you want, or anything that needs, that requires some kind of an official document, paperwork. So for instance, well, I don't want to get into that because you may have your own dreams and they can run the gamut. But I'm really looking forward to the solar eclipse in Cancer. Neptune goes retrograde on the 23rd, and this is in its own sign of Pisces, which is your opposite sign, obviously. I'm sure most of you know that, Virgo, and that's the 7th house. So how many Virgos who have been coupled have found that their marriages, committed partnerships, have been plagued in the last... I should, know this solidly. I always forget, like, when did Neptune go into Pisces? I think it was 2011 or 2012, but let's say at least 8 years. Or have you had relationships, at least one significant relationship, fall apart because the person was not who you thought they were? This could certainly be in play here, because when Neptune goes retrograde, things become, shit becomes real. And it's pulling back that veil that Neptune represents, when usually there's that sense of fantasy, delusion in some cases, but idealizing a situation and then having to see the reality of it and maybe being disillusioned. Doesn't have to play out in that particular way. It can just be more practical about your partner, instead of like, it could be a good thing. A lot of times people have, especially maybe a sign like Virgo, which tends towards perfectionism. If you expect your partner to be perfect, that's not really fair, is it? And maybe you need to be more realistic about what somebody else is capable of. Maybe you need to tend to your own garden, Virgo, and stop trying to dictate what somebody else does. On the 25th, Venus goes direct in that house of career. So maybe something gets resolved with your salary, or with the tug of war between your values and your desire for financial compensation or success, whatever it means to you. Because the 10th house is your reputation in the world, and you may be attached to having a certain position. Think about somebody who's a doctor, and some doctors, I'm talking about a medical doctor, and sometimes they will even casually use that title to let everybody know that they, are a doctor. Or even somebody with a PhD who wants to kind of throw that around too. And they may be proud of their achievement, and they should be proud of it, but they know deep down inside that they really don't like what they're doing. And they want to do something completely different, but they're afraid of losing that status in society. And that could be the value battle of, your values that you're dealing with. That's just an example. So anyway, Virgo, I hope that you enjoyed this. If you'd like a private reading, the link to my online ordering page is below, and I really thank you for listening to this. Take care. Bye.